this
Good.
computer, and it is now. See, this is gonna tick me off, man. If these little stupid emails are showing up on my screen, so let me try something before we jump in here. I'm gonna kill that and then
Hope
go to
them.
my notifications. Notifications. I've got do not disturb. Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that killed that. All right, my man, here we go. Welcome to TM3Impact. My name is Tomas Martinez, and I am the host. I am super excited. I have a dear friend with me, Sean Brennan, and he is a registered ICU nurse at Methodist Health System. And I am super pumped because he's going to talk to us about what is going on the front lines and just give us some experience. But first, Sean, we got to jump in. I need to know your San Antonio story, my man. A Cliff Note version. How did you end up in this amazing city?
So I was first here back in 2007 when I joined the Army. I was a medic, and medics do the training down here. All the San Antonians will know that over at JBSA. And I met my now wife while I was on a little bit of time off there before I went to airborne school. And she stuck with me when we started dating all through all of my travels, my deployment, all my different training. Moved in with me at Fort Lewis, Washington. And when I left the Army, she already was connected down here, had a home, had a career waiting for her. And I didn't have anywhere. I've been kind of a vagabond most of my life. So it just made sense to come here. And been here ever since.
And boom, San Antonio's home.
San Antonio's home.
That's awesome. Military City, USA. Well, Sean, I'm glad you came to live in San Antonio, my man. I'm glad you are here in this amazing city. And so now you said something that I think is really interesting. You said this vagabond, kind of life. I can't rewind the tape a little bit because you've got some amazing experiences. I know personally that you were a commercial diver. Is that right? You did commercial diving. You've got some other experience. You got to unpack that a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I was born in Seattle, but I grew up in Alaska. From the time I was a year old, my dad moved up there, and so I spent my whole childhood up there. And when I first left, I had it in my head that I was going to be a college football player. But I went to high school in Kodiak High School, and we don't have a football team. So I walked on with dreams in my head, and that obviously didn't pan out. Hit the reset button for the first time of many in my life, and went to dive school in Louisiana, where I lived for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And then diving burned me out real quick. If you know anybody that's done it or who's worked offshore in general, it'll burn you out quick. So I stopped that. Met a girl from Houston, moved there for a little bit. Messed up the better second half of my 20s, just having fun. And it was time to hit that reset again. So I joined the Army. And then that's about where we picked up the start of the story.
Yeah. So now you go into the military. Were you already thinking about going in terms of the medical field? Is that what you were thinking when you enlisted?
That's what I wanted to do. My father was a Green Beret. He was a Special Forces medic, and my mom's a nurse. And so it just, the healthcare aspect of it made a lot of sense to me. I joined in 2007, so the war had already been going on for a while. People were already getting hurt, and I didn't want to be any more of a part of that. I wanted to do something where I could help people, make it.
Well, thank you for your service, my man. That's fantastic, man. Thank you for your service. So here you are, you end up in San Antonio, and you are now at this point wrapping up school. Is that right? You were here because you had finished up obviously your deployment. You had combat medic training, but now you're here finishing up school to be a registered nurse. Is that correct?
So when I left the Army in 2012, we moved here, and I started taking classes at San Antonio College.
Okay.
with the intention of doing something in healthcare. And I joined the Texas Army National Guard, leaving active duty to mostly for the TRICARE for my family,
Smart
and
move.
also for the Hazelwood Act for my son. So, any state school tuition covered when he gets to that age. But I kept getting pulled away for small missions here and there. I do a couple months on duty, helping with an armory, loadout, or teaching CLS classes to some of the infantry units. That's combat lifesaver class. And I just realized I was going to let it keep. I love the Army, and it was going to keep holding on to me. So I nailed it down that I had to pick a degree. San Antonio College had a great military medic to nursing program. It's an RN program, and I was able to get in on my first application, and so that made it pretty easy to pick nursing.
Nice. Yeah. That's awesome. So now we're gonna fast forward the story. You've got your RN, and today, and this is, when we were talking the other day on the phone, I was sitting there going, okay, right now we have this pandemic this is not just a San Antonio issue. This is a global issue. And we had COVID-19. You are in the COVID-19 ICU at Methodist. And so I said, Sean, have you ever been on a podcast? And what did you say?
I said, no, but let's do it.
You're like, let's go. Come on. I want to be on a podcast. So I was like, listen, we have to talk about this because number one, there's a lot of nonsense out there, right? Then there's some hysteria. There's a lot of fear out there. And so what I wanted to come on and is take this time. Let's really have a conversation and starting right out, again, you were running the COVID-19 ICU unit there at the hospital. So I'm curious, what are some of the biggest myths that are surrounding COVID-19 at this very moment?
So I guess what got me there would be a good start. So I was a nurse for 3 years in a progressive care unit, which is the step down from ICU. And many people who came from my unit had already moved over to the ICU and started advancing into leadership there. And they were always hassling me to go. So I went to the ICU in February of this year, and I did 6 weeks of orientation. And then
not knowing what was coming, not knowing, you didn't know.
No, we had heard. I'll be the first to admit I didn't take the coronavirus as seriously as we should have at the beginning. And so it wasn't even in my mind at the time when I switched to ICU. I just wanted to further my career. But I did my 6 weeks of orientation, did like 2 weeks on the floor, and then my manager said, "Hey, you're a PRN employee, not a full-time employee, but if you want to grab more shifts, with unit, and they need people." And I was like, let's do that. Sounds like a chance to really kickstart my ICU career. So when I got there, I wasn't really sure what to expect. The stories had been coming in. Some of them were really, like end of the world type stuff. And some of them were more, from the other side of that it's, it's not going to be a big deal. It's just going to kind of wash over and go away. But as soon as I got there, I started seeing the kind of patients on that floor. I realized that, whether or not it hits all of us or just a few of us, you have to take it seriously. And I would say the biggest conception that leads into everybody's confusion here is that you don't know who is going to get the behind the, it's going to be the older, the people who already have hypertension and diabetes and all these other things wrong with them. Some of the patients that were on the floor when I first got there were there was people in their 20s and their 30s. If you looked at their history, it didn't have anything coming from progressive care and then transferring to ICU. I was used to seeing like a long rap sheet, on every patient that came in. And all of a sudden we're looking at this like medical history, none, COVID-19 positive, acute respiratory failure 3 days after symptom onset. And it was just surprising to me how quickly it could grab anybody.
So that myth of this is only attacking older people, right? This
Yeah.
is only affecting people. Was it, obviously, I mean, that's I think there's still some young people that feel like, hey, I'm young, I don't have to worry about this. But you know, there's going to be some young people that are watching this. They're going to see this. What would you tell as someone that's on the front line? What would you tell those young people right now?
So to the young people, I would say take good stock of who you think you are, because there are people out there who are living their best life and they are catching this disease, and it's putting them down for a while, maybe even killing them. You know, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right?
Yep.
So one of my heroes, Roger Gracie, is like world champion. Anybody who does Jiu-Jitsu knows who this guy is. He's 38 years old. He's fought in MMA. He's won, you know, almost every accolade you can win in Jiu-Jitsu. His family, the Gracie family, ascribes to a very healthy lifestyle. You know, he doesn't have a lot of vices, and he just got over a horrible 2-week spell of coronavirus, to where he said he was bedridden and couldn't go anywhere.
Oh
That's
my
an
God.
elite level athlete. And so if you're like some guy, you know, nursing or selling homes or flipping burgers, you know, you're not living that life. So I'd be careful.
Yeah. That's good advice. That's good advice for people who think that they're bulletproof, because no one is bulletproof when it comes to this. So take us through those first, you know, those first couple of weeks. I mean, you're in this ICU unit. You're seeing patients. You know, what were some of the things that really just surprised you? What didn't surprise you? What were some of the things that you were noticing in those first few weeks, and then now having time, because it's been how long now that you've been in that unit?
Man, you know, I've lost track of time. I don't even know what date it is. I think I've been working in there for three straight weeks now.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay.
But I've been working 4 or 5 shifts a week, so I'm there, you know, 2 3 days in a row. Come home, recharge the batteries, and I'm right back there.
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
in the beginning, what was surprising you? What really caught your attention? And what was like, hey, you know, what was it that maybe didn't surprise you, that you were like, you know what, you know, we're gonna get through this?
So aside from the, you know, the age and the population being hit, um, the onset of the symptoms really surprised me. So
Okay.
people would show up to the, you know, we'd hear about them or be reading their report from the ER that they were going to be transferred to us, or intubated and then transferred to us. And they would be, you know, go from being on you know, a little bit of an oxygen demand and short of breath to being down and intubated, you know, within a day, maybe even half a day. Uh, and so there wasn't really a lot of room for error. If you were one of the people that this bug was going to grab and you started to be symptomatic, you needed to pay really close attention to that. Some of the theoretical treatments that were flying around out there, you know, those ideas um, are hard to sort through.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, watching my team, you know, there's a good team of intensivists, of the doctors at our ICU. They're all, you know, considering each one of them carefully, but you realize real quick that they don't know much either yet. You know,
Mm.
this is new. This is a new virus for them as well. And so, from a caregiver's standpoint, it sort of created this environment that we're all in this together. You know, we're all starting from the same line, going forward with this, and learning as we go. And then the the quickness with which the data we were generating for our own unit was, you know, assimilated and guided us into our clinical course of action was just incredible. And, you know, I don't know what those guys are reading when they go home, but when I went home, you know, every night, I was looking for, you know, latest evidence-based research or the best we can come up with
Yeah.
right now. And you know, every day we'd come in and there'd just be a new buzz talking about this possible medication or this possible, you know, way to tweak the treatment. You know, different looks at and different outcomes across the world. And so all of that just kind of hit me by like a maelstrom. You know, it was just one big whirlwind of new information and completely unpredictable patient population.
Mm. So, excuse my ignorance because I definitely did not, no medical training whatsoever. I was a elementary teacher. So
Yeah.
let's go. I'm thinking patient care. Somebody comes down with this this virus, and here's what I hear. I hear shortness of breath. They're really struggling to breathe. Now, take me through the progression from that point. They get into to a point where it's like, this is serious. Their oxygen level, they're not being able to breathe properly. And then describe what that looks like. What usually kind of are the things that happen to a patient like that? And then to the point where they need to be, and you said intubated, right? Is that right? Did I say that right?
Yeah. So we, for purposes of safety, we really pushed early intubation, because if you have to do it in an emergency, then people have to move quickly. As soon as the whole procedure kicks up a lot of air that's been either in the patient or very close to their airway, and it puts everybody in the room at risk. So when we saw them starting to deteriorate, we were making that push for early intubation so that we could plan it out and get the room set up, have the patient in the right position, have the staff dressed up appropriately, and go forward with a good plan in place. But that wasn't always an option for every patient, because the progression could be very quickly. You could have a fever for a few days, wake up one morning and be short of breath, call into the hospital, tell them what's going on, and they say, yeah, you should probably come in. By the time you get to the ER, you're clutching at your chest and gasping. They get through their assessment, you're already on oxygen. And then, a doctor's coming and talking to you, and they're saying, hey, we gotta do this now.
Wow.
That would be an ideal, like, clinical progression. But some of the patients we've been getting from some of the outlying areas, like, that don't have their own regional medical centers available, I've read some pretty interesting notes where anything from a person didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal, so they didn't go to the hospital, and then they find them on their floor the next day unresponsive, and they have to just EMS has to intubate them, and God knows what those guys had to be going through their head when they're sitting there wondering if this is the COVID-19 patient that's going to get them sick.
Right.
To hospitals that maybe had a patient well under control initially, but they don't have the resources to provide that next level of care, that high level critical care. And by the time they realize it, they're calling a helicopter and flying them to us. So there was a lot of speed with which it could grab you. And then again, to circle back around to the unpredictability, there were people, who came in short of breath, put them on oxygen, thought for sure, hey, this is the next one that's going to be intubated, be put on a ventilator, and they just, sat there breathing through a mask for a day or two, and then they just kind of got better.
And they just got up and walked out. Wow.
Pretty close. I mean, there's some quarantining issues in there, but for the most part.
Right. So when you are when you're intubated, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
When that happens, that's basically, is that the breathing tube? Is that the ventilator that everybody's talking about?
So the intubation is the tube,
okay,
and it goes into your airway, and then that keeps your upper airway to your lower airway connected. The ventilator is the actual machine that we would use to breathe for you, basically.
Okay. So when you put that tube in, that's basically the start of getting it prepared so that you can put the ventilator on them. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Because without that, you can't do the ventilator.
Generally, no. There's some exceptions to that, but yeah, generally speaking, no.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So now, obviously you're seeing patients from all different walks of life, right? This is not a, COVID-19 is not, going after any particular area. But one of the things that I read, and I was very curious, and it is that obesity has become a massive kind of like risk, line of risk for this. And has that been something that you've seen from that standpoint in with the patients that you've seen?
Any kind of respiratory issue will be potentially compounded by obesity. So, your body relies on a difference in pressure from the outer atmosphere to the inner atmosphere to open up and expand your lungs. And part of that pressure differential comes from your own muscle activity. So you have a respiratory drive. And the bigger you are, the more difficult it is for you to lift your own weight off of your lungs to allow them to expand from that outside pressure. In addition to that, obesity comes with a lot of other baggage. It rarely comes, nice wrapped up and neat in its own little package. You've got high blood pressure, high cholesterol. What got you to obesity? Was it diabetes because you eat a lot more sugar than you should be, or you were born with diabetes and your blood sugar isn't controlled? The sedentary lifestyle that's often, not always, but often associated with obesity is just detrimental in general. It's bad for your immune system. Your overall health, your overall cardiovascular health is already compromised. So I've heard some early reports trying to tie obesity on its own directly into a COVID-19 risk of illness or risk of developing serious illness. But I would say that, if you follow any other pneumonia, flu, bronchitis, any other respiratory disease, you'd probably find pretty similar information on that as well.
Got it. So that's not you haven't seen that play out where that's one of the biggest factors that have played out with your patients.
It's not any more of a surprise to me than it would be in general, in a general sick patient. I would see just as many flu patients have complications because of obesity as I would COVID-19.
Okay.
So yes, it's there, but it's not a surprise, I guess.
And what do you think, when you look at all of the, because obviously this is a novel virus, right? And so from the standpoint of something like this coming in, and doing the destruction that it's done, my thought is that, plan of treatment can, as you said earlier, you said you're kind of looking at all options. You're looking at all different ways. Was there any plan of action that you were taking that you were really like, oh, wow, you had an idea that this would work, but you were really surprised that it did work?
No and yes.
Okay.
Yes and no. I'm pretty new to the ICU, and so a lot of what they do and a lot of the possible treatments out there were still coming at me pretty fresh. So a lot of it surprised me in general. But I would say that I have seen several patients starting to be bridged to a procedure and a treatment called ECMO, which is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. They take blood and run it out of one artery, oxygenate it through an external machine, and pump it back in through another artery.
Wow.
I think traditionally it was used for a lot of heart surgeries and neonatal, ICU care. Don't quote me on too much of that.
Yeah.
But we have seen a bridge to that as being a possible frontline treatment, and it certainly has seen a lot of success very early in our ICU. And I would say our outcomes, if you look at the patients we are getting at various stages in the disease, and then you look at the outcomes, the hospital stay, the ventilator time, or even forgoing the ventilator completely, compared to what we're seeing in other areas of the nation and the world, our hospital is really doing a good job.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Now, I mentioned when we were talking the other day, I mentioned the laying on the stomach. Like I had heard that was something that was that they were experimenting with that. Can you talk to that a little bit about the idea of laying on the stomach?
So I have very limited experience with that. It's called proning, the prone
okay.
position. My very first week on the ICU, we proned a patient who had a respiratory failure from a different disease. But we basically they lay you flat for a period of anywhere from 12 to 18 hours. Ideally, it would be in a bed designed for that, so because your face and the front of your body is not really meant to be in that position for very long. So they have specialty beds that you pad them up really good so that they don't develop blisters and bed sores, and you just flip them over like a rotisserie chicken and let them breathe. And what it does is it lets the back half of the lungs open up more easily, so you start clearing out some of the issues going on back there.
Gotcha.
The rest of the treatment indications and reasonings for I'm not really 100% on. That's a pretty basic idea of it.
Got it. So okay, so in San Antonio, obviously we have shelter in place. We have the social distancing. I don't know if you've been to an HEB recently, right? We love HEB. HEB, listen, you guys are killing it. Thank you. I love what they're doing for their workers. If you've seen, they've got like this shield across for the cashiers. Everything is very, again, social distancing ideas. What role do you think that this has played? Because our numbers, obviously, we're nowhere near where the numbers that we thought we were going to hit. Do you, in regard to that, how do you see that social distancing has played out in helping that?
Well, it's hard to say. You only get one chance to do anything, and so you don't get to look back and say, well, this could have been better or could have been worse. But compared to a lot of other areas in America and maybe even in the world, places that have adopted the social distancing policies before they got hit have seen their numbers trickle in a little bit more slowly. I am suspicious that until a vaccine is found, a definitive form of care for this is found,
right?
That that people are going to get sick, whether it's over a long period of time or whether it's all at once. And so when and how we start choosing to open things back up, they're going to have to take that into consideration. The real key, though, to the early success we've seen with our policies in the city and in the state is that it has given hospitals a chance to take patients, a little bit more slowly, especially initially while we were trying to figure out what to do. I already said that my hospital is doing a really good job with the care of these patients. And a lot of that has to do with the quality of the team there and the leadership, but a lot of it also has to do with the fact that we had a nice, slow, steady stream at the very beginning of this, to where we could develop our policies as far as protecting the workers, protecting the patient, how to take care of them. All of that had a lot more time to be developed. And so as long as you can keep the number of patients coming in smaller than the number of beds available, you're doing pretty good.
And so then really that is probably one of the greatest effects of the social distancing is keeping the hospitals, right? Because I remember them talking about that in the beginning, but that has probably been one of the biggest ways in San Antonio that we've been able to kind of flatten that idea and that curve so that our hospitals can create the protocol and the systems to deal with what we're dealing with. That makes sense. That makes total sense.
And yet you have to think, like, it's not just a question of we have 14 hospital beds, critical care beds at my hospital, and 20 at another one, and 5 at another. It's not just a question of keeping people out of those, slowing down how many people get to those beds. You also have to think that a COVID-19 patient in serious condition could be in the hospital for 2-3 weeks. And so it's not just a question of how many patients per day are going in. You got to start looking back and tacking on more days based on the hospital stay times. And so when you overwhelm a system like that, you're going to run into some kind of problem. Like once the beds are full, either you're looking at hospitals having to decide to discharge early or downgrade early, and maybe that person's not ready and they don't have such a good outcome from that, or a hospital might have to say, no, we're full, and then where is this person going to go? And maybe they don't get to go to a critical care unit, or they don't get a ventilator, or they don't get a doctor who has as much time. or a nurse who has as much time to spend with them. And so, all of those factors come into play. And so far, San Antonio is doing really well. You know, overall, my condolences to the families who weren't able to get through this. But as a city, as a community, as a whole, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously you're gonna have some people that just decide that they just want to, do their own thing, right? But I think as a whole, it seems like San Antonio has really bought into this idea of sheltering in place. And I will say that for those of you listening to this podcast, and you're sitting there and you're going, okay, well, how much longer can we do this, right? Like is this gonna go on forever? And no, it's not. But we need to be well, what would you say to them in terms of that, Sean? So somebody's sitting there going, how long is this going to take? Being that you are on the front lines, what would you say to them?
I would say that it's fair for them to be concerned, especially people who aren't fortunate enough to have a job right now, or who I feel for the people who run a business and they've seen their clientele go away. I feel really strongly for all of the servers out there in the bar and restaurant community. I did that for several years in Houston, and I can't, I never planned ahead very far. I can't imagine going, a month, 2 months without tips, without that small paycheck that comes afterwards. And so I feel for them. Sooner or later, we're gonna, we as a society, whether it's at the city, state, or national level, are going to have to decide, when we can't wait anymore. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. I have my own personal opinions about it, but I don't, being a part of the healthcare community, I don't want to put those out there. I'd rather just give, help out as much as I can until we come to whatever decision we're going to make. But hopefully, there is enough of an effort early on, and enough clinical data comes in early on to support the idea of, immunity after infection, of good frontline care, and maybe even a vaccine down the road, that we won't have to take too much of a hit, or at least too much more of a hit.
Right.
But then again, if you're not the one getting hit, it's not, it's hard to say.
Yeah, it's tough. And
Right.
definitely I'm right there with you. For those of you in the restaurant industry, we're definitely, we're pulling for you. When I go out to get my pizza, I got to give it up to Center Court Pizza right down the street here from where I live. One of the best pizzas. They're not paying for this, but if you live in the Stone Oak area, listen to me, go get Center Court Pizza. It's the best pizza out here. My family, we absolutely love that pizza. And every time we go, I love to leave a tip just to say thank you to them for what they're doing. But for those of you that are worried and concerned, listen, we don't know when this shelter in place is going to end, but we do know this. As someone that's on the front lines, what we've done has helped those on the front lines prepare and to get ready so that we know how to fight this COVID-19. Would you agree with that, Sean?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. From a caregiver standpoint, what we've done has helped a lot. If you look at cities like New York and New Orleans, and maybe even early on in the Seattle area, they were hit so fast that they didn't have time to put together a good plan. And so, it's a lot harder to come up with a good game plan, when it's already past halftime, and you're down 30-0, right? You don't have the luxury of sitting in the room ahead of time and putting up, a bunch of different, play charts and all that. You're stuck in the middle of it, and a lot of your resources that would be helping make those decisions are exhausted. And so we've been really fortunate that we had that a slower initial wave come in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So now switching gears just a second, because, one of the big things is that everybody in San Antonio is like, okay, how do we thank our frontline workers? You know what I mean? Like obviously there's a toll, because here's what I want to, I don't think most people understand what you have to go through when you get home, because obviously you have a family, you have your wife, you have your son. Liam is
Hmm.
awesome. So you get home, you now have this, you're working in this COVID ICU unit, and now you're getting home. Talk about that process of what you have to go through in order to get back to your family and be with them and feel safe.
Um, well, we don't 100% feel safe. Um, no healthcare worker that's going through this does, especially workers who are directly in contact with these patients. My wife and I, she's also in healthcare. She's been on your show. She's a PA, and she's
Yep.
currently working at the emergency room at the Veterans Hospital here in town. Um, when we knew we were both going to be working with these patients, we talked about it, and we had some hard decisions to make. You know, we looked at the data, and kids don't seem to be affected so far. You know, and we pray that that continues. Um, but we thought maybe it'd be better for Liam, just because the city was kind of going bonkers at the beginning of this, to send him to go live with my mom in New Mexico. She lives out in the middle of nowhere, and but then we thought, well, we'd be sending this healthy young kid who's probably not going to get sick, and what if he's picked up the bug already? He takes it to my grandparents, and so those were the kind of decisions we had to make. And when we ultimately decided to stay together as a family, we said, well, either our family's made for this world or it isn't, but these people need our help. Um, Going forward, the the hospital has been great in that I get a chance to shower. They provide us scrubs, surgical scrubs, so we don't have to wear our own scrubs to work.
Mm.
I get a chance to shower, clean up, put on my own clothes before I leave the hospital. I carry some bleach and napkins in my car, and take down the bottom of my shoes uh, before I go into the house. Um, Shakira, she does a lot of the same, but you know, we worry that we could have picked up that we could be those silent carriers
Mm.
from no matter how safe you are, there's always the chance that you're not doing something right, or an emergency happens and you move too fast and you don't quite see what's going on. So it's not. I'm not going to tell you I feel great every night. I just cross my fingers that we're good for another day.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't. I appreciate you sharing that story, Sean. Just the idea of even the thought of like having to separate as a family. You know what I mean? And send your son. I sit here and go, like that. I can't imagine having to make that decision, or the thought of making that decision. And so the people listening, the people that are wanting to know how they can help and how they can support, people that are on the front lines, that you're there, you're risking your life with this with helping other people. How can people, because there's a stress with this, and and maybe you could talk a little bit about that stress with this idea. You've talked about it a little bit, but how can we help frontline, people that are on the front line with this stress, and from our standpoint, helping you? What can we do?
So we get a lot of help already. People, there's no end to the ideas people come up with to support us. We get a basket of food from at least 1 to 2 restaurants a day, random area
Wow.
restaurants. Man, see, now I wish I could think of some so I could say thanks on your podcast, but
Yeah.
there's been some pretty good. There's been a lot of outpouring. So every day I go in and I'm putting on pound after pound, working in this ICU, because I'm eating, you know, turkey sandwiches and bags of chips and cheeseburgers. Um, there's a family in Austin that's been coordinating, sending us soap and shampoos for those, after shift showers. So there's just a wall of hygiene products in the employee bathroom um, at the hospital. We get letters, we get pictures drawn sent to us. People say thank you like all the time whenever they find out what we do. Um, you know, this is maybe like a little bit bigger than the question was intended to be, but most of us that are working this are buried in it right now. I went from working 2 to 3 shifts a week to working 4 to 5. I know guys that are working 100, 120 hours a week. I'm sure some of the doctors are working even more. So we're not really seeing what's going on around us too much. So if you really, really want to help, like, give us something to come back to that makes sense. So, we were talking about about those bartenders and servers, who maybe that your favorite bartender doesn't get to work his $200 Friday night anymore. He's running food back and forth in the to-go parking at Chewy's or something like that. And he's, doing it for scraps. So, if you have the means, look for someone like that and help them out. If there's a local business, if you were a member of a gym, shout out to Rodrigo Pinheiro, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, keep paying your dues, because they're not going to be there for you to pick back up that, your passion if they can't stay open. Those are the kind of things I would say would really, would mean a lot. Even if you ask the average frontline healthcare worker the same question, they might not say that, but and they might not even realize it when they come back from all of this. But we'd like to have our San Antonio back.
That is, I love that mindset, right? Let's take care of the people so that when we do come out of this, right, that the frontline people have that place to go, their favorite place to go. And so it's kind of our responsibility here in San Antonio to take care of some of these restaurants, take care of some of these places that are offering opportunities. Let's go and take care of them so that our frontline people have that place to go. I love that idea. Yeah, I love that idea. We need to come up with a name for it. I'm going to leave you in charge of that, Sean. We need to come up with a name for it. I love that, man. I love that.
I don't know. I'll do my best, but you're the creative genius behind all this.
Yeah, no, I love that idea. So, I'm curious, your son, Liam is he 7 or 8? Liam?
8.
8. So, okay, this is, again, I don't like, what's that conversation like that you're having? Because I know for my son right now, this has been one of the hardest things that we've ever gone through, right? Because, he's not being able to see his friends. He's not being able to go and have that interaction that he normally would have. And you can feel it. And so what is that conversation like with Liam for you?
So anytime he and it's frequent, anytime he says he wants to go have a play date or see somebody or go to the movies or go to Chuck E. Cheese, I tell him, well, we can't. Why not, Dad? Well, people are, we can't, the city's shut down. People are getting sick. And he usually just says, I hate Corona. And then said, well, Daddy, will you play with me? And we just look for just things to do together. I know my son and I, even with me working twice the workload I used to have, my son and I have gone on more long walks through the park, played more games of Frisbee now than we ever did before. So there is some like maybe some silver lining on the cloud there.
Yeah.
But he gets stir crazy, and we just try to rechannel it. We're now, Shakira and I are both part-time teachers for ECLA school.
Join the club, brother. Join the club.
We didn't even realize our degree covered that.
That's
so
right.
Here we are teaching second grade, and with the great support from our teachers. They email us great curriculum, and they try to organize Zooms like this for the kids.
Yeah.
And I've seen this platform become really creative. So my jiu-jitsu gym, Liam's also a member. They have classes where the instructors will get on and Zoom the whole class, and they'll do little exercises here and there.
Oh, that's cool.
Fortunately, for these kids, and maybe unfortunately for us as parents, this happened in the technological age. So they have internet and Zoom, and my boy's upstairs right now playing Fortnite on the headset with your boy.
That's right.
So if this had happened, I get it. It's hard on him, but as I'm 40 years old, looking back, at my childhood, if this had happened, I would have been like, what are you complaining about, bro?
Yeah. Yeah,
I would have been
seriously.
stuck in the house with a 13-channel TV and a rotary phone, man.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
We would have, it would have been they're definitely way more blessed than we were. That is for sure, with what they have. That is for sure. So, to wrap this up, I think, to me, that the thing that I'm thinking, Sean, is like, number one, I want to say thank you, man. When we talked the other day, there's something that I was just like, man, I want to talk to Sean and just get him to share a little bit about what he's going through. But also because, I know you, and I'm like, I want to share some of that conversation with people that I know. And so I just want to say thank you, man, for sharing this with us. I'm looking forward to the ability to kind of recap, so we're doing this Zoom. The next time we get together, I want to be in the studio, right?
Okay.
Maybe with some bourbon. I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of bourbon somewhere, but we get to have this face to face and have this conversation again. It's like, hey, what did we learn from COVID-19? Like maybe it's a month from now, 2 months from now. Hopefully it's shorter, but what did we learn from all of this and what we've gone through? I'm hoping that you'd be open to something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Yes. All right. So last but not least, here's a question that I like to ask at the end. Typically, you've heard of Tim Ferriss, right? He's got a book called Tribe of Mentors, and it's a book where he asks all of these, like, I can't remember how many questions it is. I think it's 11. But so one of the questions is, tell me the book, and I didn't preface this, so I always like to catch people off guard with this question. So tell me the book that has meant the most to you, that you've gifted to other people, and why.
Oh, well, you know this one already. So 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And man, that can be, depending on what circle you're in, that can be controversial. But if you take the stories aside and you read the book and you get to know the man, he's got a lot to say, especially for men. And I'm not trying to separate us from the women, but we need our focus too. And he's just been great. Yeah.
That is such a good book. And we got to share a cool experience with that. So for those of you that don't know, the only reason I knew about this book is because of Sean. Sean gave me this book, and I think I have it on my bookshelf. I think it's behind me in my bookshelf here.
Oh man, I got mine right here.
Oh, there it is. Hold on. Yes.
I got mine right here.
If I reach for it, I'm going to get disconnected.
Plug incoming.
Yes. But my book is right over there. But here's the cool thing that happened. So Sean gives me this amazing book. I start reading it, and I am just like addicted to it. I am just loving the book. And then I have another friend, and Kevin Crawford, Kevin Crawford, if you see this, man, Sean and I just want to say thank you, because what happens, we get to go see him live. How nuts was that? He came to the Tobin Center, and we got to hear, I guess, what did he call that? The 13th rule, responsibility, right? Is the pathway to meaning. And what an amazing experience.
It was great. When you told me you had an extra ticket to see Jordan Peterson, I didn't even I said yes before I even knew a day.
Right.
And then when you took me there to the Tobin, and I was thinking oh yeah, great, we're gonna have a little movie theater seat or whatever, and you take me up to that balcony seat overlooking the stage. Kevin, right? Yeah.
Kevin Crawford.
Thank you very much. That was pretty cool.
It was an experience, man. And I 100% agree. That book is fantastic. It's a meaty read, but it is a worthwhile read. Sean, listen, my man, I want to thank you for being on TM3Impact, and thank you for your service. Please tell Shakira thank you for her service with what she's doing. She is at the ER for the VA. Is that correct? Right. And so she is on the front line to this as well. And last but not least, we got to thank Liam.
Yes.
We got to thank little Liam. Man. Liam, man, he has been tearing it up in Fortnite with my son, and allowing us, both of them are allowing us to make this happen. So we want to thank them as well. Sean, thank you, buddy. Can't wait to do this in person.
Yeah, absolutely, Tomas. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. We'll see you.